नमस्कार दोस्तों, मेरा नाम जय कुमार तिवारी है। मेरे YouTube चैनल में आपका स्वागत है। दोस्तों, मैं डिपार्टमेंट ऑफ हाउसिंग एंड अर्बन प्लानिंग गवर्नमेंट ऑफ उत्तर प्रदेश से रिटायर्ड असिस्टेंट इंजीनियर हूँ। दोस्तों, आज मैं बात करूँगा नदियों के संरक्षण और उसकी उपयोगिता के संबंध में। आप क्या ये जानना चाहेंगे कि नदियों की क्या उपयोगिता है? अगर आप डिटेल में जानना चाहते हैं तो अथर्ववेद के 19वें अध्याय में नदियों की उपयोगिता के बारे में कुछ सूत्र श्लोक के माध्यम से भी लिखे हुए हैं। उनका अध्ययन कर सकते हैं और उनका हिंदी में ट्रांसलेशन करके उसकी डिटेल समझ सकते हैं कि पुराने समय से, प्राचीन काल से भारत में और पूरे विश्व में नदियों का, जल स्रोतों का, झीलों का क्या महत्व रहा है। लेकिन चूंकि इतनी महत्व की चीज को भी हम कितना उसकी रखरखाव कर पाते हैं, कितना नदियों का रिजुनवेशन कर पाते हैं, इसके बारे में भी आपको सोचना चाहिए। नदियों को हम गंदा कर रहे हैं तो इसकी उपयोगिता कैसे हम कर पाएंगे। भारत सरकार और कई प्रदेशों की सरकारें नदियों के रिजुनवेशन के संबंध में काफी काम भी कर रही हैं। काफी एनजीओज भी इसके संबंध में काम कर रहे हैं। दोस्तों, भारत में और पूरे विश्व में ये सभ्यता रही है प्राचीन समय से भी कि जो भी लोग हैं वो हमेशा जल स्रोतों के पास, चाहे वो नदी हो चाहे कोई झील हो, उसके किनारे ही बसने की कोशिश करते हैं। और इसी कारण से नदियों को स्वच्छ रखने की आज बेहद आवश्यकता है, उनको रिन्यूजिनेट करने की बेहद आवश्यकता है। तो इस समय मेरी फोटोग्राफी और वीडियोग्राफी टीम के एक सदस्य अमेरिका में हैं। अमेरिका के शिकागो शहर का एक वीडियो भेजा है। शिकागो शहर भी अमेरिका की मिशिगन लेक के किनारे स्थित है और शहर के बीच में से, इसी लेक में से शिकागो रिवर निकलती है। और ये रिवर जब बीच में से निकलती है तो इनके दोनों तट पर बहुत ही शानदार बहुमंजिले भवन बना रखे हैं और नदी के माध्यम से ट्रेड करते हैं, व्यापार करते हैं। जल को इतना स्वच्छ रखा है कि उसी जल से पूरे शहर के लिए पीने का पानी सप्लाई होता है और फ्रेश वाटर के रूप में उसका किसी भी तरह से, यहाँ तक कि कुछ मेडिकल प्रोडक्ट्स में भी उसी जल का प्रयोग किया जाता है। दोस्तों, अगर बात करें अमेरिका की, तो अमेरिका में 5 ग्रेट लेक्स हैं। इनका अगर मैं आपको थोड़ा सा बताऊं इनके बारे में, पहली जो लेक है उसका नाम है सुपीरियर लेक और दूसरी लेक है उसका नाम है मिशिगन लेक। तीसरी लेक है उसका नाम है हुरियन लेक। इसी तरह चौथी लेक एरी लेक के नाम से जानी जाती है और 5वीं लेक ऑन्टारियो लेक है। और इन सभी लेक्स के किनारे अच्छे अच्छे शानदार शहर बने हुए हैं। तो क्या भारत में हम ये कल्पना कर सकते हैं कि नदियों को हम उसी तरह, जल स्रोतों को उसी तरह रिन्यूवेट करके, साफ सफाई करके, संरक्षित करके रखें और इनके किनारे, इनके दोनों तरफ, अगर बीच में कोई नदी आ रही है, जल स्रोत आ रहा है तो दोनों तरफ, अगर किनारे आ रहा तो नदी के किनारे उस शहर के साइड में हम इतनी सुंदर भवनों का निर्माण कर सकते हैं, वहां पर जल स्रोत के माध्यम से ट्रेड कर सकते हैं और पूरे शहर के लिए स्वच्छ जल पीने के लिए और अन्य कार्यों के लिए भी प्रयोग कर सकते हैं। मेरी फोटोग्राफी टीम द्वारा मिशिगन लेक के किनारे बसे शिकागो शहर में जो शिकागो रिवर शिकागो शहर के बीच से निकलती है, उसके अंदर बोट के माध्यम से टीम गई है और टीम के एक सदस्य ने उसकी वीडियोग्राफी की है और एक्सप्लेन किया है वहां की बिल्डिंग्स को, उनके सिटी आर्किटेक्चर को। तो आप भी इस वीडियो के माध्यम से वहां के सिटी आर्किटेक्चर को देखिए। और इसको दिखाने का मेरा उद्देश्य यही है कि क्या हम कल्पना कर सकते हैं कि भारत में भी हम नदियों का, वाटर बॉडीज का, लेक्स का इतना सुंदर उपयोग कर सकते हैं और अपने शहर को भी यूरोपीय अन्य देशों के तुलना में इतना सुंदर शहर बसा सकते हैं या नहीं। और बसाना है तो इसमें मेरी क्या जिम्मेदारी है, हर व्यक्ति की क्या जिम्मेदारी है, इसको ध्यान में रखेंगे तो हम भारत वाले लोग किसी से पीछे नहीं है। यूरोपीय देशों से या अमेरिका से अच्छे अपने शहर बना सकते हैं। अगर आप इस वीडियो के माध्यम से एक कल्पना लेके अपने शहर को सुंदर बनाने में व्यक्तिगत भी कोई अपना योगदान देते हैं तो मैं समझूंगा कि मेरा ये वीडियो सफल है। तो देखिए वीडियो और एंजॉय करिए और इस संदेश को अपने मन में रखते हुए और अपने शहर को, अपने देश को, अपने भारत को सुंदर और पर्यावरण प्रेम से भरपूर शहर और देश बनाने के लिए कोशिश करिए। यही मेरा आपसे संदेश है। दोस्तों, अब आप अपने स्क्रीन पर जो शिकागो शहर है उसके अंदर से जो शिकागो रिवर है वो जा रही है और जो मिशिगन लेक है वहां से निकल रही है। इसका गूगल मैप पर देखिए इसकी लोकेशन, ताकि आप समझ पाएं कि आगे वीडियो कैसे आपको कनेक्ट करेगा इसकी लोकेशन के संबंध में।
Here to our left is a 9-hole, 28-acre par 3 public golf course. 60 years ago, railroad land. 160 years ago, for the most part, there was no land. It was a harbor. Now it's a brand new neighborhood, Lakeshore East. And if you have time while you're here, explore it. As of right now, they have like 2 more pieces of vacant land to work with. A corner site, a site in the background, they'll be done. The crystalline building to our left, all the horizontals, is called the Coast. It's rental, BKL architecture of Chicago. And in the background of the gap here to our left, on that blue glass, current home, Blue Cross Blue Shield, Illinois. Now, if you're taking this tour 15 years ago, see the columns and gap a bit more than halfway up back there? That is how tall the building was. 33 floors, 1997. It was designed so they wanted to expand, they take off the roof, add 24 more floors, and they did, and it's seamless. 2009 to 11 for that expansion. Triangular shaped building is Swiss Hotel, 1988. Architect Harry Weiss. Triangular shape helps to maximize river views from the hotel rooms. Personally, I love the gap to our left, where the colors, shapes, and textures slam together. Background to our left, undulating floor plate that is called Aqua, also by Studio Gang Architects. Bottom 20 floors, Radisson Blu Hotel. Next 30 floors, apartments. Last 30 floors, condos. The waves are balconies. And finally, here to our left, down Columbus, is now Chicago's 4th tallest building and tallest building in the world, but its name changed twice. Initially, the Standard Oil building, Big Stand, then an Amoco building. It is now Aon Center. It was the world's tallest marble-clad building when built. However, it no longer is. Now, because a taller building has been built clad with marble, that structure is no longer covered with that material. Back in the late 80s, they realized that thin marble was cracking and buckling, was in danger of falling off the building. Whoops. Did not hold up too well to the freeze-thaw cycle that we have every year and have had every year in this area since the completion of planet Earth. And they totally reclad that building with granite from North Carolina, and it cost roughly $80 million. It cost $120 million to build the entire building in the first place. Right-hand side for a while. Little short 6-story building to our right called the Gleacher Center. It just serves as a downtown campus for the University of Chicago. And apparently, none of the classrooms in that building have windows. They felt the windows would be a distraction for the students downtown. It's totally dumb. They need a blinds, not a blank wall. Blank walls make buildings look ugly. In this mid-century modernist black box to our right, now this goes by its address of 401 North Michigan Avenue, 1965. Skidmore owns the mural. In fact, the female architect never got recognized, Natalie Dubois. And tucked under the plaza to our right, the flagship Apple Store by Foster and Partners of London, 2017. Kind of reminds me of a half-open MacBook Pro. Same location with Jean-Baptiste Point du Sable at his cabin in Fur Trading Post. And to our right, coming up, the elegant white glazed terracotta-clad Wrigley Building. Section on the river, 1921. Northern half, 1924. Spanish Revival in its design, some French Renaissance elements. This is the building that Chewing Gum built, designed by Graham Anderson, Probst and White. Right now, the architecture firm of Perkins and Will calls that building home. The tall, reflective glass building right here in front, neon spire on top, is currently Chicago's 2nd tallest building. The height does include the very top and tip of the spire. Trump International Hotel and Tower by Adrian Smith, formerly of Skidmore, owns the mural. A pretty good example of the contextual style. The building fits into the site and surrounding. The building itself ascends in height and setbacks at different levels that relate to the roof lines surrounding structures. First setback to the roof line of Wrigley. Second setback for a building across the river. Third setback the building right next door. Daytime hours, the glass is bright and reflective. When dark, it is clear and transparent to see directly in that space. You would then notice the floors 4 through 12 of the parking garage for the building. During evening hours, you see these columns rising behind the glass. 16 to 30, the hotel space, then to the top, condominiums, built between 2005 and 2009. There to our left, that dome on top, initially called the Jewelers Building, but completed back in 1926 to house some large jewelry firms. That dome on top, late 30s, early 40s, was a restaurant and bar called the Stratosphere. There's also rumored that when the building first opened, there was a speakeasy in that dome on top, often visited by Al Capone. The Al Capone part is a rumor, but it's a rumor that I spread. Here to our right, the steel and glass Miesian and modernist black box is in fact designed by one of the fathers of modern and international architecture, Ludwig mies van der Rohe, whose very famous motto was less is more, that the strip buildings down to the bare minimum. Originally, one IBM Plaza, now the American Medical Association Plaza. Mies came to Chicago from Germany back in the late 30s, became head of architecture at IIT. He designed the Seagram building in New York City, TD Center in Toronto, Lafayette Park in Detroit, and the Barcelona chairs. As we clear State Street here to our right, commonly referred to in the twin corncob towers, in reality we're going to have Marina City. Built between 1960 and 64, designed by architect Bertrand Goldberg, who then went to Germany to study under Mies van der Rohe at a school called the Bauhaus. So in this area, you're going to have teacher and student side by side. About 18 floors of parking, a proportion of condominiums. 16 pebbles per floor. Former office building, now a hotel. Former theater, now the House of Blues. Small shops and restaurants on site, a marina at the base. Virtually a city within a city, an introvert's paradise. A movie came out back in 1980 called The Hunter, starring Steve McQueen. There was a car chase at the parking lot of this West building. There was a car shot to the river. They stumped for that movie. The parking is valet. So one thing I do want you all to do is use your eyes. Even if you tune me out, use your eyes. See what you like, see what you don't like, see what flows, and see what doesn't work. I tend to like gaps in spaces. Notice how the space here to our right is being framed and hemmed in by the texture of almost 3 buildings. Dark tinted bay windows, Western Chicago River North 87. The background, the flat reflective glass, horizontal banding 2009. Here to our right, vertical aluminum mullions, 321 North Clark Street, 1988, Skidmore, Owings and Merrill. 4.5 years ago, they built out 35,000 square feet, a restaurant space on 4 different levels. As we clear Clark, into our right coming up, this beautiful red brick and terracotta clad structure that runs horizontally along the river in the Prairie School design. The Reed Murdoch Warehouse Building, 1914, architect George C. Nimmons. The clock tower top center designed to hide the water tank. When built, perfectly symmetrical. But now notice the left-hand side is 1 bay shorter than the right. And that is because they built this bridge across the river back in 1928 and widened the roadway. They demolished the westernmost bay and reclapped what was left to look like it originally did. Rising up 785 feet, the modern, glassy, and reflective 300 North LaSalle by Picard Chilton Architects out of New Haven, Connecticut, clad with an abundance of aluminum. A very nice two-level riverfront steakhouse is yummy. So before this building got built, on the site here to our right was a parking garage in the mid-1950s, torn down roughly 2005. Around here, I like the contrast between 2009 modern, the old building next door. A pretty good example of the Chicago school style of architecture, the tripartite design. Think of a Greek column, and at the base, shaft, capital on top. The base of the building visually anchors the structure of the ground. The shaft draws your eye up. The corners around the top to finish things off. A tea and coffee warehouse was completed back in 1912. Glass penthouse, 1984. You're going to notice base, shaft, capital on many buildings, old and new, including this unbelievably huge and this ginormous building here to our right of the Merchandise Mart by Graham Emerson, Probst white Art Deco style. Limestone cladding, streamlined verticality, set back to the building rises. But completed back in 1930, at that time, this was the world's largest building, having more than 4 million square feet of space within its walls. So massive like 14, 15 years ago, the building had its own zip code, 60654, now being shared throughout the area. With those 8 bronze busts, they represent some of the Prince merchants of the United States, including Eileen, Woolworth, Wanamaker, Marshall Field, and a few more. The building was commissioned for and by the president of the Marshall Field organization. It was going to be their wholesale warehouse and distribution center. The plans did not fully materialize because 1930, country was at the height of the Great Depression. They sold the building in 1945 for a fraction of its value to Joseph Kennedy, father President John Kennedy. They sold the building in 1998. We're now at area has transitioned dramatically over the past 8 years. Brand new, brand in the background, brand new there, brand new, brand new. 6 new buildings around here over the past 8 years. The most recent addition, the one here to our right, the roughly 60-story Sears Tower, rising to a height of nearly 850 feet. If you had taken this boat tour like 8 years ago, you'd have not a problem seeing train tracks right here in front of us. Those tracks are still there. It's been decked over in that plaza, a 50-story tall building called River Point. The sculpture right here in front is called Constellation by Santiago Calatrava. Building here to our left, lantern on top, sits on a very historic site. Back in 1860, a temporary building stood on that site called the Wigwam, held the very first ever Republican National Convention where Abraham Lincoln was nominated. There are 4 double-decker drawbridges. The Spanish are called the River. Of the 4, Lake Street in front here is the oldest, 1916. Going to get rebuilt starting sometime next year. Now, here to our right, the building that draws everyone's attention, total diva of this area, 150 North Riverside by Getch Partners, architecture firm headquartered here. Building itself, a pretty good example of form follows function. The site helps to dictate the shape and design of the building. And then here, a slender piece of land to work with. You're wedged in between a river and train tracks. And a conventional office building been designed where the columns come straight down. On this side, those columns will slam along the river's edge. On the other side, into the train tracks. This is called a core-supported building. The main central concrete core takes on the weight and load of the tower. Those diagonal beams transfer that load. Example, hold my arm up from my body, you push down on my hand, it's gonna fall right to my thigh. If there's a bar, right palm to my waist, you can't push down. Same general concept with the diagonals. And we'll tell you more on the return trip. As we clear Randolph, here to our left, about 5 years ago, a 5-story building in the mid-1950s. Thankfully, it's been torn down, and this weight now rises, roughly 55-story tall building, 110 North Wacker by Getch Partners. Same firm with a very full base. Building it to our left, also a very dynamic base. Last I have read, between like 90 and 95% leased up. Right now, largest tenant is Bank of America. It took more than 500,000 square feet. Here to our left is Bank of America Tower. And here is a picture of the building that stood on this site that I took before it got torn down. I don't miss it, and neither do you, because it was ugly. So as we clear Washington and enter this Art Deco canyon, here to our left coming up, the Civic Opera Building by Grandeur, curls to white. Limestone cladding, setbacks of the building rises. Do notice it kind of reminds you of a giant chair or a throne. Seat portion of the theater and stage, the wings of the building are the armrests, the tower your backrest. No, of course, they did not misspell building, that's Latin. Chiseled here in my lifetime. Blank one here to our left, a bit more than 20 years ago. Some minor consideration about perhaps showing movies on the wall, watching the plaza across the way. Nothing materialized. Gonna have some carvings here and more carvings above of comedy and tragedy. What's tragic, that $20 million building opened up November 4th, 1929. A few days into the stock market crash, leading to the Great Depression, Civic Opera went bankrupt soon after. It's now home to the Lyric Opera. They're very successful. Back to our right. Around here, you can see below the next set of buildings, not to the basement, to the train tracks. All the buildings to our right along the river are built atop air rights. And that means the developers bought the air above the train tracks from the railroad companies to build and develop buildings above that space. Very common in big cities. Huge project right now being built in Manhattan called Hudson Yards, all on air rights. Gonna have Gateway Centers 1 and 2, 65 to 67, Black Box Modern, Skidmore, Owings and Merrill. Background to our right, green glass, black cladding, slope roof, Modern 83, Skidmore. Taller stone clad building is postmodern, 1992, Skidmore. So all 4 buildings by the same firm, 65 to 92. Again, tracks below lead to and from Union Station, a short, classically inspired building, a quarter of a block to our right, next gap, 1925. I know that most of you all aren't from Chicago, but some of you all, especially adults of a certain age, have seen some of these buildings on TV. You may not realize it. If any of you all have ever seen The Untouchables, 1987, Sean Connery, Kevin Costner, there's a scene at the end with the baby stroller falling down the stair steps in a shootout that was filmed in the Great Hall of Union Station. Very nice public space. This river is still in use. There's a barge coming downstream right now, making your way beneath Adams Street, aka Route 66. And at one time, there was a beautiful grand concourse at the train station that stood directly here to our right. But in the name of modernization, it was stupidly torn down back in 1969, replaced with the mediocre Gateway Center 3, 1971. A short 3-story building here to our right now houses a health club and corner bakery. Initially, the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. And back then, pre-computer, you have an exchange, had a big old trading floor. Those big trading floors that had not like a lot of interior support columns that would get in the way. Instead of using interior supports, the exit from the outside is the majority of the supporting, X-bracing. I shall discuss the building here to our left, the small red dot with a return trip. But as we clear Jackson, here to our right, the fourth and final of the Gateway buildings from 1983. By Jim DeStefano, who at that time worked for Skidmore. Again, with an example of architectural contextualism. The building fits in the site and surrounding. A graceful curve in the facade, a slight bend in the river in front of us. Green glass of the building, green water of the river. I know, at least some of you all, at one point in your life, the last like 14, 15 years, have possibly seen The Dark Knight, the Batman movie filmed here in Chicago. Opening scene, Joker and his gang are gonna rob Gotham National Bank. They bust out a window in an office building here to our right. Use a zip line to go to the rooftop of Gotham National Bank, where they bust him with a school bus. That's next, but in reality, the former main post office for the city of Chicago. Built in phases and finally completed back in 1932. Art Deco, Graham Harrison, Rose and White. It was the world's busiest and biggest post office. Chicago needed the biggest, but with the mail order and catalog capital of the world. Stores like Sears, Marshall Field, Montgomery Ward, Spiegel, all using catalogs in their heyday. They're talking roughly 2.7 million square feet of space, about 62 acres all under one roof, the perfect spot, on top of train tracks.
दोस्तों, वीडियो में अंत तक आप बने रहे, इसके लिए आपका बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। आपसे अनुरोध है कि इस चैनल के वीडियोस देखते रहिए और चैनल को सब्सक्राइब करिए। ये वीडियो समाप्त होता है। अगले वीडियो में किसी महत्वपूर्ण विषय पर फिर आपसे चर्चा करेंगे। नमस्कार।